Hey strangers, well some of you are strangers, some of you are people I've actually met. Notcast 219, 13th of July 2022. I am in the midst of a British heatwave, which by some people's standards means that it's barely time to take off your parka, although obviously in Scotland everyone's been wearing shorts since it was minus 30, according to the cliches. The heat wave today, the best way for me to describe it is I'm going to do the very, very typically British thing and moan about the weather and stay indoors with the curtains drawn. Well, not strictly true. Instead, I'm going to be talking about Suede and their seventh studio album, released in 2016, Night Thoughts, and the 2014 Dogman Star Live box set release. This band are, as any of you that have followed any of my other Notcasts will know, are the band that I think I've seen them the second most out of all the bands that I've seen. And they're also, I think, the band that has probably the most individual meaning currently out of almost any band that I listen to and love on a regular basis. I think I've seen Suede probably about 67, 68 times. I am aware that if you are in America, that is 66 times more than they have played in the past 25 years in your country, and I apologise about that. It also, of course, is one of those things. Some people go on holidays, and I don't. Now, that's going to sound really weird and a bit wanky. Oh, people like us don't do holidays. I don't. I go to countries and I go to towns and I go and see bands that I love, and I hang out with people that I like that like the same music as me, because I think good people like good music. That's my idea of a holiday, is going to somewhere and seeing a band that I like. Obviously, 2020 and 2021, that wasn't really an option. 2022, more common now. So, on the live shows around about this period, starting with the Albert Hall show in 2014 through to the last one of the shows that I saw in 2016, I think I saw Suede 10 or 11 times. I'm very, very lucky to have seen them, but also some bands, I think, they don't get better with age, I think. Whereas I think Suede have really grown into being vital artists now. And that sounds really weird. Some people, when they want to see a band, they want to see a touring jukebox, a museum of modern music, old songs played by old men that reminded everybody of when they were younger and we were younger, and when they had a full head of hair and when they weren't fat, and all those type of things. And of course, to quote the great pub, I don't know if you've seen her lately, but Christ, she's looking rough. We can't pretend it's 1992 anymore. So yes, I have gone and seen bands that play albums on their 30th anniversary, or actually when I saw the Stooges play Raw Power in 2010, phenomenal gig. That was 37 years after the album had come out in 1973. And it doesn't seem like that's 13 years ago now, although obviously it is. And two of the members of the Stooges have died, and the Stooges haven't played a show since 2013. But for me, what's interesting and fascinating about a band when it plays an album in full, an old album in full, is how has this song, how have these songs, how's this album aged? Has it aged like milk? Or has it aged like a fine, fine wine? And that is one of the things that I think Suede have been able to do, is that they've been able to map their lives and the songs which they wrote and recorded in the first part of their career, which is now even the last album of the band's first incarnation pre-split is 20 years old now. Which is mind-boggling to me to think that it's that long ago. Even that, those songs have aged, in my opinion, very, very well. And that is why I think Dogman Star Live in 2014 is, I think it's a great record and it's a great album that was played live. Now the strange thing is, I remember seeing Suede about 4 times, 5 times on the Dogman Star Tour in 1994, 1995. So it's not me trying to reclaim a past that I didn't have. It's not, I didn't go to the 2014 shows with the same people that I went to in 1994 and 1995. I didn't live in the same city. I didn't necessarily have all of the same friends. I didn't have the same girlfriend. I certainly didn't have the same children, because I didn't have any children in 1993. So going back to Dogman Star 20 years later, it's a chance to kind of see just how far things have changed and how much you've changed over time. But at the same point, I'm reminded of what a sculptor said about, you know, I don't know, was it Michelangelo or something? And he said, well, what did you do to carve, you know, whatever it was? And he said, well, I just cut away all the bits that didn't look like the subject. And that is probably the best way to describe it, is that over time, you know, the way that you change as a person and an individual and your experiences shapes who you are and who you become. And of course, the song on Night Thoughts is called Learning to Be, which kind of indicates that there's at least some commonality in that. So Dogman Star, 20th anniversary. The band announced that they were going to be playing 2 shows in the UK. I think one was in Oxford and the other one was at the London Royal Albert Hall, one of the finest venues in the world, on the 30th of March 2014. So that's 4 years after the first of the major reunion shows in 2010, and that they were going to be playing the same venue 4 years later, performing their seminal groundbreaking album, 1994's Dogman Star. It was aside from the ICA shows and the album shows that they did in 2011, you know, these were not new concepts to Suede to go back and learn all of your songs. Dogman Star Live was initially released on vinyl as a 2 LP set featuring just the Dogman Star portion of the set in a gatefold sleeve, only on vinyl for Record Store Day in 2015. And this was has you know, your fairly standard inner sleeves, and it comes on lovely black vinyl, one of the very few Suede records that probably isn't on coloured vinyl actually, in some form and some configuration somewhere in the world, and features the 12 songs from the album played live in the sequence that they appear on the record. And yes, I was at the Royal Albert Hall show that is on this live album, by the way. Obviously, when you've seen Suede as many times as I have, that's not a show off. The probability that you're at the show that's used for the live album is generally pretty high. Later on in 2015, we got the release of near enough the full show on a 4 LP 2 CD set, which is here, as marketed by Edsel. This was a Suede web store exclusive, I think, although now obviously you can get it in some other places. They played the Dogman Star album in full with associated shows that went with it between March 2014 and I think July 2014. So obviously starting in Oxford, which I didn't get to go to, the Royal Albert Hall, and I think ending in Shanghai or somewhere like that. Obviously I wasn't at the Shanghai show because I've never been to China. And it's an interesting thing going back 20 years from now. I can't see the band doing a 2022 20th anniversary tour of A New Morning, for example. It's interesting from a certain perspective, is that yes, we're revisiting the past and we're going, well, what does the past look like now that we're looking at it and we're reliving it now? And there's an element of nostalgia around that. But we've got to remember there's a song by Jello by Afra called Nostalgia for a Time That Never Existed. You know, the Dogman Star album is very, very beloved among Suede's fan base and the not Suede fan base as being their best album because it is arch, dramatic, unashamedly pretentious, with aspirations far above its station. You know, if there was ever a band that you had to tell to stay in their lane, it probably would have been Suede around the Dogman Star period. And it's an ambitious album that they perform live with a string section. So recasting the album in 2014, it's not quite like looking at childhood pictures or baby pictures of what things were like 20 years ago, but it gives you an opportunity to revisit the band's experience. And I think Dogman Star works great on stage. Some of those songs are better than others. As Brett himself says, sometimes when he's singing The Power, he doesn't necessarily, he would rather have chosen a different song for the album. But it is what it is. And the 4 LP and 2 CD box set now, here are some of the people that went to see them. I wasn't at the front row for this show. I don't tend to do front rows for Suede shows, not because I don't want to, but because I've seen them lots and I like standing in different parts, generally near Richard because I think he's a fantastic player. But it's it's a great experience, and seeing those songs live, those were songs that for a decade I thought I'd never get to see anybody sing those songs for a long period of time. Suede were a band that certainly I felt were a little bit written out of history after coming up The world changed, the Suede changed, and the world changed in a different direction. And sometimes people think that they grow out of a band, and then 20 years later they go, actually, I haven't grown out of the band at all. Just because there's the concept of object permanence, the idea that if you haven't thought about it, the band just disappears out of existence and don't do anything. Frankly, that's on you as a fan. The band did not necessarily go away. Brett Anderson was still doing solo material, but there you are. There's some photographs of some people in the crowd. I think I know at least 3 or 4 of them on this page, which is quite nice. In fact, I looked at one of them and thought, was that me? And then I was like, no, it wasn't, because I was wearing a different t-shirt that night, which is a pretty strange way of looking at it. I later found out that actually I also appear on an Alabama 3 DVD, which is exciting, I guess, but that was a very long time ago. And so Dogman Star live, I think, was a really fascinating thing to revisit. But at the same point, I thought about those songs as who I was at that point. A 41-year-old bloke watching a band play songs from the first half of my life, and kind of going, that's kind of strange. The ideas and the memories that I had from 20 years previous were then being remade and reforged with new experiences as an adult. Now, Dogman Star, as an album, I think has aged very well. It is unashamedly what it is. It's got aspirations to brilliance, and it succeeds in every way on those. And the 4 LP and the 2 CD set here features the Dogman Star album on 1 CD, by the way, and it features the encore section, which is 4 B-sides, being, if I remember correctly, Killing of a Flash Boy, My Dark Star, Whipsnade, and Together, alongside a greatest hits set of things like Film Star, Trash, Animal Nitrate, It Starts and Ends With You. The Living Dead's on there as well, For the Strangers, So Young, Metal Mickey, Beautiful Ones, and the encore, which is a rare live performance of the full-length version of Stay Together, which runs for about 8 minutes with a string section on there. There is one song which they played on this night, which is not on this set, which is a song called I Don't Know How to Reach You, which had its live premiere at the show. I wasn't expecting them to play the song. Obviously the band were, but not many other people were. And I've got to tell you, I was like, this is phenomenal stuff. Suede's reunion and reformation albums, Bloodsports, Night Thoughts, the Blue Hour, and of course the upcoming Auto Fiction, 4 albums. To me, it's a reunion done correctly. It's a sense of continuing unfinished business and carrying on with the artistic vision, as opposed to, shit, better go and write some new songs, otherwise we're a nostalgia act. These are songs which, the new songs are songs which deserve to exist and stand up with the rest of Suede's body of work. It makes Suede a lifelong project, and really the encapsulation of someone's creative identity and artistic vision, as opposed to, here's a bunch of songs that we put together as an excuse so we can tour, which is not how people should really do it. So the second song that they played from the album was What I'm Trying to Tell You, which I think they premiered in Brixton in February 2015. They played 6 songs for the apparently when they were deemed with the award being Enemies Godlike Geniuses, whereas myself and a few other people were kind of like, they've been godlike geniuses for a while, guys. What took you 23 years to realise they were? But they played a 6-song set at the Brixton Academy, which was it was fun. It was over very, very quickly. I think it was only about 23 minutes. It was pretty strange, actually, to be up in the balcony whilst other people were down in the tables, rattling their jewellery and clinking their glasses and dancing merrily in their seats. One of the strangest Suede experiences I've had, I think it's fair to say. And obviously there's I Don't Know How to Reach You, which was in the Royal Albert Hall premiere in 2014. There was also a 3rd song from the album that the band started playing in about June 2014, which is called Tightrope. And when it was first played live, it was played in an acoustic form. And I was trying to piece together, how are these songs going to fit together into an album? Normally, when you hear a band kind of drip feeding out songs to you bit by bit, and I had the good privilege to see a number of Suede songs played live and debuted live, say for example For the Strangers, I Don't Know How to Reach You, Tightrope, most of the songs off Night Thoughts actually, a number of the songs off Dogman Star, and Suede Breakdown, for example. I saw the first time that was played live. Um, and it doesn't; those songs don't feel like afterthoughts. Those songs were played and committed with passion and heart, as if they'd always been classics. And certainly these days, Suede have not phoned in a show for a very, very long time. So obviously bands have good days and bad days, but when a band has a bad year, that's different from having a bad day, isn't it? Which is where we are. So we had the announcement in September that the band would be premiering their seventh album live on stage at the Camden Roundhouse on the 13th and 14th of November 2015. The album was called Night Thoughts, and there was a single, although the band didn't release any singles from the Night Thoughts period. There was a track, it's probably the best that was dropped, because nobody gets it. Nothing gets released these days, they get dropped. Like a bomb on your ears, was The Outsiders, which is the second track on the album. And I thought, when all of that started to happen, is that I was like, yeah, because I'd seen them at Bexhill, by the way. So chronologically, I've seen Suede a lot. So, I saw Tightrope in Brussels in 2014. I saw I Don't Know How to Reach You at the Albert Hall in 2014. No, I said Brussels 2014, didn't I? Then there was Bexhill, the Glastonbury warm-up show, where they premiered I Can't Give Her What She Wants, I think, which were played at the Bexhill show at the Delaware Pavilion in 2015. There was What I'm Trying to Tell You, which they played at Brixton. So I'd seen 4 or 5 of the songs live beforehand. And I was trying in my head, how do these songs all fit together? What kind of tapestry is it? Where are the songs going to sit in the sequence? How's that going to work? And then they also debuted Pale Snow at Glastonbury, which was also broadcast on British television, by the way, in 2015. So I'd heard probably about half of the album before the album was announced. And in my head, I was trying to go, well, I think this is really good, but I don't know how this all works. So the recording for Night Thoughts, by the way, I should point out, the album was recorded in Belgium at the end of the tour. So I saw the last show on the Bloodsports tour, which was August 2014, in Brussels, and the band then stayed in Belgium, and they recorded for about a week in a studio there, where they'd worked up a suite of about 45-50 minutes of music, which they played as a whole, and they'd built probably about 12 songs, and most of those songs didn't have vocals or lyrics or anything like that. So the band built an instrumental suite, almost like a soundtrack to a film that didn't exist, and had worked that up, and then there was orchestration that was added to that, and then Brett went and took that instrumental recording and started to meld and to weave the songs into it. So there was 2 songs which had been written and finished by the time of the initial recording in August 2014, being obviously I Don't Know How to Reach You and Tightrope, and then there were another 10 or 12 pieces which hadn't been finished, and then Brett took those pieces away, added lyrics, vocals, melodies, moved some of the parts around, rearranged some of the songs. About 4 pieces of music were taken out, and about 4 new pieces of music were added in, and those 4 other pieces I think were recycled and reused in the Blue Hour album in 2018, in the period that went with that. So they weren't lost, but the album itself, 12 songs, no B-sides, no extra tracks, nothing like that. Just the 12 songs on the album as a complete and fully formed artistic identity and entity with an orchestra. And when I first experienced Night Thoughts, was when the band debuted it live at the Camden Roundhouse on the 13th of November 2015, and then they followed it up with a 90-minute set of B-sides, hits and treats, which included things like the first live performance of the B-side Darkest Days, or Heroin, for example, or something like that, songs that they hadn't played or very, very rarely played indeed. Incredible show, and I kind of came away from the Night Thoughts portion of it, and I was like, this is a masterpiece. This is, and it is undoubtedly, it's certainly one of Suede's best albums. It's not my favourite, because Bloodsports is my favourite, but Night Thoughts is a masterpiece, and it's absolutely one of their best records, easily in their top 3. And bearing in mind how high the bar was for some of the other ones, being in the top three Suede albums is better than being the sum total of the entire of the Red Hot Chili Peppers career, of course. It's a concept LP, Night Thoughts, and when the band played it live for the first time, they played the 12 songs in sequence, in order, with a film that was screened on a mesh kind of in front of them as they performed underneath. And the film, which was directed by Roger Sargent, kind of encapsulates and articulates, I think, some of the obsessions and some of the themes that sit inside the album. Night Thoughts as an album is a concept LP, and it's a concept LP in the same way that any album is a concept LP, because the concept is the things and thoughts and obsessions that the vocalist and the lyricist has at the time in which the album is recorded. Brett Anderson has said that he has an addictive, compulsive personality. His addictions and his compulsions were geared towards things like recreational drugs, for example, and hedonism at a certain point. But then they moved on to things like family and relationships and identity and agency and all those type of things. And so Night Thoughts as an LP is a concept album which is geared towards around the concept of growing older. If Bloodsports is an album that's about falling in love, we always remember that falling is easy. It's the landing that hurts you. And Night Thoughts as an album is about the landing. It's about the staying. It's about what happens after you fall. Do you pick yourself up? What do you do next? Once you've got past the ripping each other's clothes off 24 times a day kind of process of a relationship, what happens when it then becomes around, well, who's going to get the cat food? Those type of things. When there's an element of a relationship that becomes administration, Night Thoughts is about that. And it's about growing older, and it soundtracks that element of life. And obviously the band are older, the people are older, they're in different relationships, they're less fired up by recreational drugs and gay animal sex. It's more about, well, what do we do about the kids, and what are we going to do about paying the bills, and who's going to get a job, and all that type of stuff. And it's a concept album about the thoughts that people have as they drift off to sleep. Although in the film that accompanies it, this is 12 short films that have an interconnecting series of plots and images and people that appear in them. And it's around, the film is kind of cast as the moment when somebody dies is that you see the whole of your life passing before your eyes. So the whole of the film is kind of a flashback in a non-linear way, revisiting important life points from the last relationship that the two main protagonists or antagonists have together as they go through various tragedies, joys, and they get together, they fall in love, and then they fall apart. It's those type of things. There are recurring motifs that occur through the songs, so that's recurring musical motifs, recurring imageries, recurring lines, recurring rhyming structures that you go through the album. So every song that's on the album has a counterpoint somewhere else within it. Track 1 is called When You Are Young, and track 11 is called When You Were Young, for example. And then that kind of opens and closes the album with a return to the start. And so the whole life flashes before you, and the film kind of makes this quite explicit. It's about the male character whose name I have forgotten, because I'm not sure they're ever referred to by their name in the film apart from in the credits at the end. Dies and commits suicide, and then the whole of the film is around that sense of revisiting your life, the decisions that you've made on the way, the good and the bad ones, flashing before your life as your life comes to a close. Deathbin was something that was on a lot of people's minds, I think, because the album Night Thoughts somewhat oddly was released on the 24th of January 2016, 13 days after David Bowie's death. And also 2016 was obviously the year in which the Grim Reaper really made up for his lack of activity, often in very short proximity. Lemmy, Alan Rickman, David Bowie, Leonard Cohen, Prince, loads of people that were a major kind of touchstones of popular culture, a passing of the baton on from one generation to the other. And Night Thoughts as an album had that uncanny effect of being able to kind of read and predict what was going to happen next, which we were going to see a changing of an era from one period of world history and one period of cultural touchstones to another. And watching the album be played in full at Camden was a staggering experience. You imagine, so it would have been the first time that most people would have heard No Tomorrow, um, Learning to Be, Like Kids, and The Fur and the Feathers. Those were the songs that played live for the first time. So I knew Outsiders, Pale Snow, I Don't Know How to Reach You, What I'm Trying to Tell You, Tightrope, I Can't Give Her What She Wants. I didn't know the other songs. And then everything kind of locked together, and I just had this sudden kind of understanding of how the songs and the film and how everything together was going to work, is that it's a really confident, assured, mature statement around what it is to fall in love and to stay in love and to land in love, and what happens when you fall and then you fall apart and what goes on there. It's just an incredible LP. Now, if you want, I could do the middle-aged man thing of doing a YouTube play and just going, woof, that's a good song. That isn't going to tell you anything, and we really need to get a little bit further. This is the 2018 coloured vinyl version of it that was available in the Amazon box set. The Amazon box set, by the way, features the band's previous studio recorded albums in this box. I've put some of the signed fan club stuff in there. It had Suede, Dogman Star, Coming Up, Head Music, A New Morning, and there's also space to put Blood Sports was in there. There's also space in the back to slip the Blue Hour in if that's what you want to do, and of course that's exactly what I've gone and done, because that's how I roll, baby. That's how I roll. But of course, Suede being Suede, they put this box set on sale while they were actually on stage playing a gig, and everyone who was at the gig wanted to buy it and was then buying it on their mobile phones on foreign data plans in the middle of a street somewhere after a Suede show. So, Night Thoughts. I think this is a phenomenal album. It's two vinyl discs, 48 minutes. There was a replacement program for it as well, because they got the side splits incorrect on the initial pressing on the Amazon box set. So there's a replacement pack that comes with it, and they were all pressed on coloured vinyl for the first 1,000 copies. It's now available in your standard black, but here's a gorgeous blue version of the Night Thoughts LP. And it opens with When You Are Young, which is a short, kind of almost a precursor to the rest of it, almost like an overture. If you remember in the oldie-fashioned days, they used to put an overture before a song, and When You Are Young is that overture. It's a statement. It's about, this is who you are as a youthful person, when you've got plans and ideals and ambitions and guts and all that stuff that you want to go for it. This is who you were as a child. And obviously when your life is flashing before you and you're thinking back about the pivotal moments of your life, one of them is the world that you lived in when you were a child, and the experiences that you had when all the adults were twice as tall as you, the shelves were further away, you couldn't reach anything, and half an hour was an eternity, because it was, so in some respects it was, a percentage of your life, whereas now half an hour is like 0.001% of your life. When you're 3, half an hour is an eternity. Of course, waiting for a train for half an hour, that can be an eternity as well. Or maybe if you're a dentist, half an hour is an eternity. But when you're having fun, half an hour goes in the blink of an eye, as we all know. Track 2 is Outsiders, the first track to be dropped, as the hip young kids say. Obviously, I can't show you the single of Outsiders because it was only a promotional CDR and there was no B-sides on it. But Outsiders, to me, is a Suede classic. It's not a straightforward Suede hit, not like It Starts and Ends With You or For the Strangers. It's not dripping in melody. It's not got more hooks than a shark's mouth. It's a song that is designed to be propulsive and repetitive and minimal, and to build upon the themes and ideas that you've got in the rest of the LP. And I think Outsiders ties in with the theme of also When You Are Young. When you're young, you are in a process of feeling outside of the society that you live in. You're economically excluded. You don't have a sense of belonging. You don't know who your tribe are. You don't know what your thing is. And everyone's got a thing. And you're an element. You feel outside of the reality that in the world when you're a teenager. certainly for me, maybe not for anybody else, is, I felt that I saw a reality in a completely different way to the way that was vocalised in all the media and the television and the movies and all that stuff. Is I saw a different reality to the way that everyone else was. I felt outside of the world in a way which was never really properly articulated except through loud music made by miserable people wearing black. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And I also think Outsiders is chosen deliberately to kind of reference the film, The Outsiders, and the kind of the movement of films in the 80s. Rumblefish, for example, was one of those as well. Films about being alienated, young, generally pissed off and not having any money, and kind of doing that whole thing of Marlon Brando when someone says, "What are you against?" and Marlon Brando goes, "What you got?" Being an outsider is part of that. Track 3, then. This is track 3, the first track, first proper song, which I didn't know until they played it live in front of me, is No Tomorrow. And No Tomorrow is again quite an upbeat, hedonistic anthem. It's a song that's kind of like when you're maybe a little bit older, as you kind of look at what it's like to be young and you go, God, it looks knackering. And No Tomorrow is kind of like trying to capture that, but from an adult point of view, around fighting the sorrow and understanding what it is and how difficult life is and going against it. Flipping over onto side 2, we have Pale Snow, which is, I think it's a lovely little song. It's very cold, though. If there's any song that sounds like walking in the snow in Stockholm in January, it's probably Pale Snow, actually. I should bring out the media book of it, because I've been showing you the LP cover for ages. Let's do something a little bit different here. Is that we've got the film, by the way, is on a DVD that's in there. So No Tomorrow moves into Pale Snow, which then moves into I Don't Know How to Reach You and What I'm Trying to Tell You. And those two songs, I Don't Know How to Reach You and What I'm Trying to Tell You, are kind of songs about the adult experience of relationships, is around communication and miscommunication and how people can be in violent agreements and violent disagreements at the same time. I'm trying to communicate to you, and I'm trying to what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, and then you're not grasping the thing that I'm trying to tell you. And if you've ever had an argument with anybody, I'm guessing you have, but if you ever had an argument with anybody, there's a point where you'd love to shoot somebody with a Douglas Adams point of view gun, and you'd get them to go, "Ah, I see the light, hallelujah, I know exactly what you're saying, I agree with you, I am wrong, and you are, of course, absolutely 100% right. I've seen the light." But that is, again, about songs about communication, identification, and trying to reach through. So it's going, and I mean, I've been in a relationship where I thought things were quite good, and what I hadn't realised is, in fact, is that the other person in that relationship had started to make sudden plans that don't include me, and then they'd started to make decisions around it. And there's I read a really interesting article about separation recently, and then one of the things is that person that you thought you were going to be sharing your future with, those ideas that you were going to be sharing them with, is that person had actually started to project a mask so that you couldn't read their emotions, and they were suddenly starting to make plans that didn't have you in it. And it's not necessarily even the fact that that relationship comes to an end, but it's the fact that there's a degree of deception around those plans that don't include you, around going, right, so you've made decisions around where you're going to live, what you're going to eat, where you're going to work, what you're going to wear, who you're going to see, all those type of things that just don't have me in it. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, if I'm in a relationship with you and I'm your meant to be your best friend and the person that you're growing old with and your soulmate, and then all of a sudden you're making different plans around what your future is going to look like, and it doesn't have me in it, there's an element of kind of going, so I'm being deceived here. And people are almost a spy wearing a human face, conducting activities that are going to be undermining the reality which you thought you were going to have with them. And again, when there's the lyric around, I don't know how to reach you, I can't give her what she wants, what I'm trying to tell you, they're all songs around that gap in a relationship. So as I said before, Bloodsports is a concept album about falling in love as an adult. Suede's Night Thoughts is an album around landing, around falling, around hitting the ground. That's the thing that hurts. What happens after you've fallen in love, and then what happens when you hit the ground? What happens about staying there? That's the difficult stuff. Not everyone can do it. And if you're, yeah, I almost said something about the Prime Minister here. I was trying not to be political. I'm going to keep it that way. But these are powerful songs about communication and closeness and intimacy and interaction with other human beings. And then we have Tightrope, of course, which is the acoustic song which the band started playing in 2014, which is around walking, a tightrope here with you, trying to stop you from slipping through my fingers. These are not happy songs, but they're important songs. And it makes a nice change because, as I said in a previous episode about when you're young, your understanding and concept of relationships is around, well, there's a person and I like them and they like me and the sun always shines on TV. And then all of a sudden you get, it's more complicated than that. So there we go. And then there's the tracks which open side 2 after Tightrope, Learning to Be and Like Kids. And Learning to Be and Like Kids are kind of like songs about maturity. It's kind of like growing into and becoming yourself and becoming who you are. I Can't Give Her What She Wants, the song that they played at Bexhill. And I was listening to it, okay, my God, they've made a quantum leap in terms of their songwriting. Songs like that, I was like, some of the songs on Bloodsports are designed to be bangers and some aren't. But then you suddenly go, right, so not only have they managed to achieve the ability to have a successful artistic rebirth, but they've somehow eclipsed what they've been able to do previously and talk about the same kind of themes and concepts and ideas about relationships and interpersonal activity and hopes and dreams and ambitions, and to do so as adults in a way that's powerful and compelling. There is a line in it which is, all that's left are the ashes of her sorry little notes, so nobody can read the sentences that she wrote. And it's like, well, if you've written a note, sometimes you write I write things, I write things, I write poetry and songs and all that type of stuff, and part of that is to try and organise my thoughts in a way that helps me make more sense of them. And then sometimes when people write things into a note, you suddenly realize actually what you're looking at is not just a bunch of words here. You're looking at a confession, or you're looking at an explanation, or you're looking at some, in some respects, almost a statement that might say, well, actually, I've decided that it's time to, make a decision about my own life and to in some respects, end it. Sorry, I should have given you a trigger warning about suicidal ideation, but I didn't realise that's where I was going to go when I started this 37 minutes ago. And then there's the idea that, sometimes when people make the decisions that it's time to end their life, that happens very, very quickly. And as we've seen, both in politics and in our personal lives, things happen very slowly and then they happen very, very quickly. Indeed, a number of my friends have been bereaved this week, and actually I have as well. A family member's died, and you kind of get a sense beforehand that something might happen, and then all of a sudden it happens very, very, very quickly, and it's kind of like a very quick decline to the point where you know that they're not coming back from that. That is, especially if you're an older person, if you're about 88, 94, something like that, and you fall over, it's normally that's the thing that hastens your decline. You go, that's the end of life moment where suddenly things start to fold in very, very quickly. In the same way that apparently if someone decides that they're going to kill themselves, the period from that final decision being made to the moment where that life comes to an end is normally measured in minutes, less than 10 minutes. It's really quite frightening how quickly those things happen. Occasionally I have very, very dark days when I can't see where in those sunless afternoons I just can't find myself, and I'd kind of just sit there and it seems to be that there's absolutely no sunlight in anything, and it's a terrifying feeling. And then if those thoughts take hold and they win, then obviously something very, very bad can happen indeed. Sorry, I suddenly realised I've stuck the belly band, which is a terrible phrase, upside down on the deluxe edition of the set. So there are 15,000 copies, by the way, of Night Thoughts in the deluxe book pack here, which I've just scrolled through and I've not really told you anything about. Features the album on CD and the film on DVD, and it's limited to 15,000, which this one is 8,743, and I bought it from a HMV in Preston, of all places, on the 24th of January 2016. But there you are. And then after I Can't Give Her What She Wants, we come to the last two songs on the album, and these, by the way, are one of them is my favourite Suede song, and that is a very, very, very high high accolade indeed. There's the reprise, which is When You Were Young. It's kind of like the way of revisiting the themes from the opening track of the album, closing it off and saying that is, talking about when you were young and what happened when you were young, and that is all in the past and it's now come to a close and an end. And the last song on the album is The Fur and the Feathers, and it's my favourite Suede song. Out of all the Suede songs, and there are dozens which I absolutely love, The Fur and the Feathers is the best one to me. It's the one that has the most meaning. It's the one that has the most memories attached to it. It reminds me of a time that happened before the album came out, a significant period of time before the album came out. And it opens with a line about, you're waiting at the station, and around, I'm scared to touch you, I'm scared to not. There's that sense of anticipation. On a platform, you are waiting. If I'm thinking about this actually earlier on today, is the major adult relationships I've been with, the place where I met the person in 3 of those circumstances was at a train station. And there's the moment when you're waiting on the platform and you think someone's going to turn up, but you're not quite sure. You don't quite know. It's one of the most terrifying times. Just before you go out on stage and you play a festival, it's really scary because you kind of go, this could all go horribly, horribly wrong, and you're invested in that emotionally. There's nothing more terrifying than that moment. There's a line in The Fur and the Feathers where he talks about the thrill of the chase, and it's exhilarating and it's terrifying at the same point. But it's not really the chase, it's the catch that is the thing. And unlike what Motorhead say, I don't believe that the chase is better than the catch, by the way. The catch is what matters. It's the moment where you know it's like it was all worth it. You've put yourself out there, you've shown your feelings, you've risked it. You've exposed yourself, and then it's up to someone to accept or to reject that, and then somebody accepts it, and it's like that is the most incredible thing. And if that could be the start of something beautiful and life-changing. And The Fur and the Feathers always reminds me of that moment, that when just before somebody turns up on a date and you're kind of going, I don't know if they're going to turn up, I really hope they do. Yeah, I've been stood up, by the way, not for a very long time, but I have been, and it's really quite depressing, that slow and steady realisation when you realise somebody ain't going to turn up. But then there's also that sense of exhilaration and adrenaline when somebody does, and it's like, that person, if they didn't think that maybe something good could happen, they wouldn't have turned up, would they? And The Fur and the Feathers is my favourite Suede song. It's the most meaningful Suede song to me. It's got the most incredible lyrics that detail the exhilaration of the moment of falling, the thrill of that, the adrenaline of it, in a way in which very few other songs I think have ever been able to do. And there is a beautiful acoustic version of The Fur and the Feathers which was performed for, I think, We FM in France. I will post a link to it down there, which is just, to me, is like one of the high points of Suede's artistic identity and career. The Fur and the Feathers is the best Suede song I've ever heard. It's my favourite. It's just a song that every once in a while a song hits me and I go, there is no way I could write a song that good. That song takes thoughts out of my brain that I wouldn't even have had and then suddenly makes them real. And The Fur and the Feathers is that song that kind of captures just a sliver of a moment that comes through somebody's mind before somebody appears. And then that moment when you see them and you lock your eyes with them and you know something is going to happen, something amazing and terrible and beautiful, and it could break your heart, but it's worth it. It's all worth it to take that risk, because out of fear and out of hope can come amazing things. And sometimes out of fear, some terrible things can come, because sometimes, the most terrifying and scary thing is to tell somebody how you're feeling about them, or to even tell somebody that you've got feelings about them. And The Fur and the Feathers is a song that really kind of grasps that moment and really captures it in a way in which very, very few songs I've ever heard actually do. That moment where you're kind of, almost like when a cat kind of shows its belly to you, it's exposing its weakness to you, its haunch. Then The Fur and the Feathers is a song of incredible tenderness and vulnerability. and I absolutely adore it. I think it's one of it's my favourite Suede song, and that closes Night Thoughts, which is, in my opinion, one of the best Suede albums. Well, Suede have done 9 albums. I heard 8 of them, and like when they played "Fur and the Feathers" for the first time at Camden, and I was like, this is incredible. What an amazing song that is. And then at the end of the show, you switch your phone on, you check all your messages, and then you suddenly read that there was a massacre at the Bataclan for the Eagles of Death Metal show. And you're surrounded by all your friends, and you've just gone through this incredible euphoric experience. One of your favourite bands has played this amazing set of songs right in front of your eyes, and people that were hoping to experience exactly the same type of euphoria, maybe 108 miles that way, were murdered. And it everything kind of just stopped for a minute, and I was very aware of how incredibly lucky I was to be able to have the life that I have and the people that I have and had in them at the time. And then the next night, the 14th, they played the Night Thoughts album again, and I was like, it's still amazing. It's not just the shock of the new the first time you hear it, you go, oh, that's brilliant. Like the second time, I was like, oh my god, that really nailed it. Suede are the band that, in my opinion, have performed the best and most artistically successful and exciting comeback out of any band that I've liked, because they came back as adults and they continued the themes and ideas and obsessions that they had in their first part of their career, and they came back and they absolutely nailed it and excelled at it as adults. An incredible band that I love them to bits. They changed my life. Night Thoughts is an album that always reminds me of the last time that I fell in love, which was an incredible experience. And if I got to experience it just once in my life, I would have been a very, very privileged man. And every time I hear that album, I think of that experience, and I'm very lucky to have it. I really am. But that is Night Thoughts. They say that when you die, your whole life flashes before your eyes, and sometimes that whole life lasts a whole lifetime. And then you suddenly look at it and you realise that you're a glass half full kind of guy. Very quickly wrapping up, I've got about 30 seconds. For those of you who don't know, last year I had a near-death experience, and I woke up from that and I realised how incredibly lucky I've been to have had all the lives and the experiences that I've had in the past few years of my life. It's been a